Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wolfie's Wish Pet Loss Support Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Messer, and today we have as a guest my friend and bereavement coach, Crystal Soucy. She's actually one of the admins in our Wolfie's Wish Pet Loss Support group on Facebook, which is free and anyone is welcome to join. And she's a certified pet loss, grief, and life coach. So she's great to reach out to. She does one-on-one and offers free support groups as well. But I brought her on today because her own grief journey around the loss of her dog Bachi in the May of 2022 inspired her to pivot her business. And her primary focus is now on helping pet parents process their grief and navigate their new normal. She carefully companions and coaches pet parents through anticipatory grief, which is when you've got a pet that has been diagnosed with an illness or is just coming to their senior years, um, and guilt and trauma. She offers free ongoing pet loss support groups that you can find in the show notes. And Crystal prides herself on her ability to actively listen, to connect with people from a wide variety of backgrounds and life circumstances. So, thank you so much for being here today. You have such a big heart. I'm so glad we connected last year on Instagram. I think it's been a wonderful platform for people that are grieving loss of a pet to find companionship and understanding and validity. And I'm so glad you're also a part of our Wolfie's Wish Facebook's pet loss support group because, again, it's just another resource. Everybody needs to know and have as many resources as possible.
Yes, I agree. And thank you so much for the invitation, Eric. I'm so happy to be with you today.
Yeah, and it's great to honor Bachi and Wolfgang, that really brought us together. Our hearts were shattered. And I think it takes, well, I know it takes a lot of courage, took a lot of courage for me to get into the space that I am today. And I believe the same is true for you.
Yeah, very much so. It did not come easy or happen quickly, that's for sure. Yeah, it was after quite a few months of very intense grief, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. The grief that I experienced was like nothing ever had ever experienced emotionally,
yeah,
and really just threw me on my back. And I think a lot of people are kind of caught and blindsided by their grief. Would you agree?
yeah, absolutely. Our relationships with our pets are a love story like no other. And they pretty much never have a happy ending the way I see it. It's tragic no matter how it happens. And yeah, it just seems like as unique as everybody's story is, the emotions that are felt are what kind of bond us and
Mm.
bring people together in their grief. And I often say, because what happens in my support groups very organically, and it's different every single time, is really such a beautiful thing, because here you have a group of perfect strangers that come together because they feel like people in their circle, in their everyday life, friends, family, don't get it, don't want to hear about it, and they're able to feel safe in a space of strangers, really, over time, if they become regulars, which many of them have in my community. They get more and more comfortable. But to just be so courageous and vulnerable with their broken hearts is, and to share what they do, as far as their life and their loss is really a beautiful thing. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I was walking, I took a break and went for a walk, and I kind of have this baddish habit of getting ice cream almost every day because the ice cream shop down the street opened and it's really, really, really good. Okay,
no judgment
anyway,
here.
yeah. So at least I walk around the block until it's done.
Work it
Sorry,
off a
there's a
little.
point to this. There's a point to this. So I was on this walk and I was thinking about our podcast, and I kind of looked around me and I thought, I wonder how many people here are pretending to be okay, whether they're
Mm,
grieving the loss of a loved one or a pet. Just the topic of grief is still so taboo. And it made me have this awareness of what if I treated everyone as if they had just lost their pet. Like
Mm,
that level of kindness and compassion is the type of person I want to be. It's not easy. Um, Especially living in Germany, I feel there's a cultural difference and people don't talk to each other on the street. But aside from that, um, wouldn't it be a more compassionate workplace and world if we could all handle each other with that kind of delicacy? Because it's really true. There are people right now that we know that are experiencing grief, and they're trying to pretend they're okay and trying to
yep.
hide it because they keep getting told things like, "It's just a pet. It's time to move on. Just get another one."
Mhm.
And we can't force those things. If we could, we would, right? I
Yeah.
tried. Did you try?
Yeah, yeah. I am definitely one of those people that for a long time, many months, would just go through my day with my, known smile. I was known for always smiling and continued to do that despite my grief, but felt like I was dying inside. And
Yeah.
yeah, the world just keeps going on around you and you're just suffering and you're in so much pain. And for a very long time I cried myself to sleep every night. And my grief, I'm very open about it, was pretty dark for a while where, I really didn't even want to continue living myself without Bocce.
Yeah.
I was in a
Yeah.
complete identity crisis. He was the love of my life. He was my baby. And even though I was lucky enough to have him for 16 years, which, that's what a lot of people's perception is, it's still not long enough,
Mm,
and it's still, the relationship that you're, like you said, your world gets turned upside down, the rug gets pulled out from under you. And one day, in my case, I had a very, very long anticipatory grief stage where Bocce needed a lot of care and was on a lot of medications. And it was, that constant questioning of when, how, all of those things, knowing it was coming, but it still doesn't prepare you. So,
right.
whether it's sudden loss or a long anticipatory stage like I had, I don't think either is better or easier because in the end, we all feel just devastated.
Yeah, and thank you for being so open about, not wanting to be here. I also experienced thoughts of, well, I don't want to die, but I don't want to be going through this. So what do I do? How do I handle this? How do I navigate this? Who's going to tell me what to do? And I think, being, like I said, being in another culture where people don't talk to each other every day made me feel even more isolated. And it was like, well, who can I share this with? I only
Mm,
have a few really friends here, and can I lean on them that much? No. I actually called my mom every single day, and that was the person I leaned into to confide, like, I'm not doing okay. I don't know what to do. Will you walk through this with me and help me find a way out? And luckily I had her, and there are people
mm,
that don't have anyone to lean into. And that's why I'm
yeah.
so glad that you have your Instagram account, your support group. I've got mine because I think about those people out there that don't have support and have to try to figure this out, and it's
Yeah.
just too much. It's too
Yeah,
much.
that's something that you and I have in common actually is the close relationships with our mothers. And I talk to my mom every day too. We're very close. And she was through this whole thing, my rock. And she was actually, like a second parent to Bocce too, where, especially in the months leading up to saying goodbye, she would come over, she would take him, she helped with medications and all of those things. She had almost equally close bond and love for him. So yeah, and sometimes, all we need is that one person. More would be nice, right? But to at least have one person to
Mm.
be able to sort of lean on and feel supported by and know the enormity of your grief is
Right.
helpful. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask you, I in my group, I haven't had anybody that had an unusual pet. And I shouldn't even say unusual, but you know, we think of pet loss grief being to cats and dogs, but really it could be any pet. And And I haven't had the experience of anybody coming in with like a turtle or a hamster or a frog
Mm.
or a bird or a horse, or a goat or a chicken or anything else. Have you had people come in and are they timid? Are they embarrassed to say like I'm grieving the loss of my rabbit?
Yeah, I agree. It is rare. And I've only had one or two cases where someone kind of came in briefly and shared their story. It was a guinea pig, cute little black and white guinea pig named Oreo that someone was grieving the loss of. But yeah, it does tend to be mostly dogs and cats, with rare exception here and there. But yeah, but
So
they
I
are
just
more than welcome.
Yeah, like let's put that out there that anyone that's listening that might feel alienated or isolated or embarrassed because they don't have a cat or dog, you're still welcome. And part of the
Hmm.
ground rules in my group, as you know, is that we don't crosstalk, we don't comment on other people's situations. That's what
Right.
you and I are for, the moderators, so that no one can diminish your grief or tell you what to do about it. And that's just how I feel like the group should go.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I'm
Grief is grief.
always, yeah, yeah. I have a very caring and compassionate community, as I'm sure you do too. And I love the way that they support each other and show up for each other, even when they're, in such a high level of grief themselves. I witness them showing support to others. And I know that that's healing to them, whether they feel it in that moment or
Mm,
not.
mm.
Little by little, those are baby steps in their own healing journey.
And, you and I we both went through the same training with Colleen Ellis's
Mm,
program. And, there's some support groups or organizations that sponsor support groups that are run by master's level um, psychologists. And what's your take on that? I've heard a lot of different things, and recently some veterinarians said to me, nobody needs that. That shouldn't be a qualification. People want to feel heard, validated, and they want to know they're not crazy. You don't need a
right.
master's degree to do that. And
Yeah.
I kind of toss this around a lot. Like, what kind of qualifications, do we need? And does that group mean that it's more beneficial than our group? Have you ever asked yourself those questions?
Yeah, actually, that comes up a lot for me. And as a matter of fact, I just went through a job application process where I applied for something through a vet locally that is, and may already have at this point, hired someone on their staff for this, which is wonderful, right?
Wow,
That's
cool.
the direction we want to see this go in. But
Yes.
unfortunately, because I did not have that master's degree, came
Mm,
close. I have an almost master's degree, but they wanted a clinical licensed social worker, and that was, I guess, a non-negotiable. And I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed because I felt like I am equally as qualified based on my unique background and very personal experience with this. And
mm.
with the feedback that I get from my community time and time again, just kind of reassures me of that all the time, that this was the right direction for me to go in, and I am helping people. So yeah,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a controversial thing out there where, I think there could be a tendency for those that have earned that, and, great for them. It's hard work. I know firsthand because I went down that road and wasn't able to see it through to the end for my own life, circumstances that got in the way. But so it's absolutely commendable, but yeah. So, and I know that they can sometimes sort of look down on, for lack of a better word, and just not see it or take it as seriously. So, but
Hmm.
you know, yeah, I feel like I know I stay in my lane, and of course I am aware and stay tuned into if someone is part of my group or comes to me one on one and it's above and beyond what I feel like I can provide. I have a network of people where I'd be able to say, I think you need, more professional help, or a
Right.
therapist or doctor, and would never hesitate to do that. And a lot of times this work is done in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
I am not trying to take the place of a therapist. So, and this is a wonderful, I think, supplement to maybe the work that they are doing with a therapist,
Right.
with other things happening in their life. So, yeah, there's room for all of
Yeah.
us.
Well, I think it's great that that clinic is acknowledging the grief and doing something about it. I have found that some social workers don't have the experience, and if they haven't gone through the loss, then they're kind of just going through a textbook of like, well, this is what you should do and this is what you should do. And
Right.
that's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But I actually myself started out seeing a therapist, so an LMFT that I knew back in California
Hmm.
and said, "Hey, I've lost my mind. Where do we go from here?" And she wasn't really able to help, to be honest. She would say things like, "Well, yeah, that cat with his toddler brain, da 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 da." And I just kind of felt like, no, yeah, I need a solution. Like, I don't need you to just pat me on the shoulder. I need solutions. So I
Right.
actually sought this specialty and found a pet loss counselor, which I didn't know existed, but I just
Mm.
was so desperate to like, I knew that my mom had seen a grief counselor for the loss of her mom. So I knew that that existed. And even then I was like, whoa, that's intense. Okay. But here I am. Right. So I found a great counselor. Sorry, and I have to be careful with that word legally. So I found a pet loss bereavement specialist,
Mm.
and she and one other specialist helped me out of my fog and into my body. And we did things like tapping exercises, which at first I was like, this isn't going to do anything. Why are we tapping my head and my arm and everything? And then I just trusted them and said, okay, I mean, you're the expert. Sure, I'll do some tapping. And anyway, that's just one of example of the things we did that I questioned. But again, I was really desperate. So I almost feel like for someone to be any type of bereavement coach, they need to have gone through and experienced the loss themselves. And so from a clinical standpoint, I understand the necessary um, caution that needs to come about, treating grief and the psychological aspect. But at the same time, I think that they can work hand in hand. I think we
Mm.
can work together, whether it's psychiatry, psychology, and a pet bereavement specialist.
Yes.
Um, but opening up the conversation, there's no perfect answer, and everyone's grief journey is different. But I want to say to the listeners, if what you're doing isn't working, keep searching.
Mm.
Whatever it is, I don't care what it is, whatever your solution is going to be that doesn't turn you to drugs and alcohol or gambling or spending or what, all these bad habits, like let's find solutions for you. And I found people that have said, talking to this psychic was really helpful for me.
Hmm.
Great. Keep doing that. I mean, don't spend all your money on them, but keep doing that. Or tarot readings or things that I have never considered doing and still don't. I don't care. I think that it's crucial for us to find our own answers,
Yeah.
and that doesn't have to be the same for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, grief is so exhausting, right? So it can sometimes feel very daunting and feel like it takes so much effort to try to seek things out, but you just never know what some little baby step can lead you to, an email or a phone call or filling out somebody's contact form on a website and what that ends up bringing to you. So it's, the
Right.
reward is worth the quote unquote risk. And it's just a willingness because yeah, like you're pointing out, you barely scratch the surface, right? There are so many tools that we can have in our toolbox, and it's about sort of
Mhm.
customizing your own. And there's no cookie cutter way. It's just a willingness to kind of be experimental and see what works for you. Yeah. So yeah, not only are our stories with our lives with our fur babies very different, so is how we are going to go through our grief journey. And yeah, great
Yeah,
points.
I think thank you for bringing up how exhausting it is because I've forgotten, frankly. My loss was 3 years ago, and it it's hard to remember the fog that I was in. However, um I wanted to point out that there are a lot of resources, and if a listener even goes to the Facebook support group, you can post questions in there. We encourage it. I wish people posted more questions in there. I'm always like,
Mhm.
"Hey guys, come on, how you doing? What's going on?"
Yeah.
But to say, what are some alternative methods, or what has anyone tried this or that? And, wolfieswish.com has an entire page of resources that I've put together on things that I found helpful and people that I know and people that I use. And so, yeah, that's a great starting place. And I do want to tell the listeners, like, even if your pet is still with us and maybe just got a diagnosis, or they're, 14, 16, 18 years old, like, go ahead and bookmark some of these resources,
Mm,
because you're going to be going through some mental fog, mental fatigue, and try to set things up to be as easy as possible. And so, there's help. Great. But bookmark it, make it easy to get to. And I just want to digress for a second, because I have a book that I just published, and it talks about this. And it says, it's section 4, kindness to yourself, slowing down, and patience are keys to healing. But it also goes into some examples of alternative modes of healing. And I want to read this list because it's pretty big. Tarot, Reiki, therapeutic music, animal communication, grief support groups, books, of course, Wolfie's Wish grieving cards, meditation, yoga, sage smudging, crystal therapy, both crystals, so Soucy, and the actual physical crystals. Let's just be clear there. Raindrop therapy, rolfing, massage, writing, psychics, prayer. Wolfie's Wish has some courses and a guided journal. So those are just some examples that maybe people haven't thought of. And what I love to do on this podcast is, ask the guests, what did you find helpful? Is there anything that is not on that list that you can add? Because I know that that's also sometimes a topic of your groups, is what are some other things you can do? Is it a memory book? Um, do you have anything to add?
oh my God, there's so many ways to memorialize our pets, which again sort of lends to the healing because as we know, where's that saying about the he who mourns mends, right? And the mourning is the action, the activity of outwardly grieving as opposed to what we feel inside. And I know it can be hard because people think I can't do that. I'm not ready for that. It's just going to make me cry. It's just going to make me sad. But I don't know. I'm all for a good cry personally. And again, just speaking to how different it is for everybody, I can't help but think back because it's so recent when I had a guest come and do a chair yoga for grief class. And I had a couple people tell me that they're regulars in my ongoing support group, but they were not going to participate in that because they knew that that was going to be kind of triggering for them. Just any points of sort of silence and meditation, or
Okay.
maybe some certain things that are said. So, and again, totally respect that because everybody is going to resonate with something differently. I mean, I have what I sometimes joke is like a bocce museum. My condo is like a bocce museum. You can't look in any direction and not see pictures and collages. And I've outside, I have a garden. That's my bocce garden. I mean, it's just everywhere. The necklace I'm wearing is a bocce necklace. So, I've got my tribute table with his ashes and fur clipping on it and another picture. And it just goes on and on. It goes on and on.
Good.
So, yeah.
Alright, that sounds amazing. I haven't seen any of that, and I haven't done anything other than, I mean, as an artist, I draw pictures of Wolfgang and I, like, copy them from photos, and that's my way of, memorializing him, and very
Mm,
personal to me because my energy goes into it. But yeah,
right.
I think I met some reporters actually on a flight, and they were in the stages of their senior dog and having to make decisions soon to whether or not to euthanize him because he wasn't able to walk. And I said, "Well, how are you going to remember him? What are you going to do to honor him?" And the woman said, "Well, I'd really like to just have his skeleton and have a little like Day of the Dead shrine." because she's from Argentina. And I said,
Yeah.
that is the coolest thing I've ever heard of. I've
Yeah.
never seen it. And her husband is like shaking his head. He's like, no, don't agree with her. Don't do it. I don't want to do it. I said, look, you guys, this doesn't have to be right by your front door. Everybody that comes to your house doesn't have to see your dog. Put it somewhere that's personal and meaningful to you. But I think it's
Right.
awesome. And to this day, I don't know what they decided on, but I'm giving people the permission to do whatever feels
Mm,
natural and helpful. I wanted to taxidermy Wolfgang, and my husband was vehemently against it. He was like, "No,
yeah.
we're not doing that." So you do have to make some compromises, but um, left to my own devices, I would have done it and put him somewhere prominent, and
Mm,
I would talk to him. And I'm not crazy. I am very confident in saying that I would do that. Um, because if it ends up being creepy to me, I just can put him away. You know, I can take that's the beauty is like however we decide to memorialize our pets, we can always put it away and bring it back out. So maybe Thanksgiving comes and you don't want to have your entire house be a shrine to your former pet, right? Because some people aren't going to be able to stop talking about it, right? And we just have to choose our battles. So,
yeah. True.
but I really think it's important for our own healing, mental health, and well-being to mourn and grieve exactly the way we need to and follow our guts and our instincts because we have a lot to lose. And who are we trying to impress?
Mm,
I mean, my
right.
true friends aren't going to stop calling me because I taxidermied my cat. If anybody doesn't want to be my friend anymore because I taxidermied my cat, cool. I'm going to go find the people that do think that's okay. And those are going to be my friends. So
Yeah.
yeah, it might cause some risks in our lives, but I'm willing to take that risk. I
Mm,
have to
mm,
put my priority on my mental health and well-being, especially being diagnosed with mental illness and having
mm.
some struggles around that and around addiction. I made some decisions a long time ago that my health and well-being comes first, and judgment and approval from others is
Yeah.
way down the list. It's there, but it's way down the list.
Yeah. Yeah. And I applaud you for that because
Thank you.
excuse me, that doesn't come easy for a lot of people, and it does take conscious effort to, not worry about what other people are thinking or judgment. I mean, we do enough judging of ourselves, right? Never mind, let's not be constantly letting in everybody else's judgment. And a lot of times we're not even sure if that's what they're thinking. We don't know what other people are truly thinking a lot of the time. So in many cases it's just the story in our minds, and all of the thoughts swirling around that just kind of add these layers and make it challenging for us. But I also want to go back to the point that you were making about anticipatory people in that stage, and it being such a great thing to sort of at least be thinking about or know what's out there, so when the time comes you need it. Because I do have a few people in my community um, that I know they're constantly sort of torn between, I don't want to even be thinking about that, but I do want
Mm-hmm.
to sort of set myself up for success, if that's even the best way to say it, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to there's no way around it being crushing and hard and difficult. There's no fast track through our grief. It's a process, and it's hard, but to just know you have resources at the ready. I'm so passionate about that part of it because I wished I had done that myself.
Me too.
It wasn't until after the fact that I struggled my way, crawled my way out, and tried this, tried that, and it was so hard, and just didn't even know this kind of help was out there, number one. And that's what I hear all of the time now that I do what I do. When people find me, us, how many times do we hear, "Oh my God, I didn't even know this was out there. I'm so glad I found you." And you go to there's so many pet support sort of honorarium, memorial pages out there, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people posting about their grief. And it just reminds me all the time that this is so needed. This
Mm-hmm.
is so needed. Now, at the same time, I also feel like, why can't I get my name out there more? Why are people finding me right? Like, let's get into that for a
Yeah.
second. This type of business is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. And, we're competing with all these influencers and social media.
Mm,
I don't know what's about the latest. I don't know what's, and I do. I feel like I'm shouting in a sea and
mm,
saying, "Hey, I've got solutions and tools and validation over here. Does anybody want to come and join the
yeah,
party?"
it's
And I know it just takes time and effort, and I appreciate you saying about the anticipatory and having tools, because that's why I'm here and have devoted my life to Wolfie's Wish, is that I don't want anyone to feel as alone and desperate as I did.
right.
And so I'm trying to fill that space and let people know, hey, bookmark these things. If you don't want to think about it today, I get it. Enjoy your time with your pet. Maybe your pet
Right.
is super healthy or you're going to get one soon. If you are, I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast, but maybe the time is coming to adopt another pet, right? Maybe you've
Hmm.
lost one and you're like, how can I ever do this again? Well, tools and
Right.
solutions. And
Right.
I want to segue for a second about the grieving cards, because I don't like pushing my own products. I don't like talking about it, but if you do it with me, then it's a little bit more
Yeah.
safe. But yeah, it's actually very vulnerable for me to talk about them because they helped me, but I don't want anyone to feel like I'm telling them what to do. But I have a lot of people say to me, I wish I had those when I
Mm,
lost so and so. So I'm like, okay. So you guys listening, I have a deck of 30 affirmation cards that are designed to help us work through our grief. And I designed them to be read once a day, but of course you can maniacally go through the deck. There's no wrong way to do it. But I have them here and I just want to shuffle them. And I'm gonna let Crystal comment on whichever one it is, if that's okay.
yeah. Actually,
I
in
don't think
preparation
it.
for this, I pulled my
Oh,
my
you've got
top 10
yours?
favorites. So
Oh my
I, I've
gosh. Okay.
I've
All
got a
right.
few at the ready too, if you want me to sort
Okay,
of.
so yeah, she's got the mini deck and I have the illustrated deck. And so it's the same text, they just are presented differently. And just one more explanation about those. The illustrated deck actually helps talk to children because it has pictures of the emotions that are being talked about, and also 7 major pets. So as I mentioned before, we grieve any animal. Okay, so this one I'm gonna pull is I will be gentle with myself. And it's a little monkey doing yoga. And then the
Mm,
back says, today I will take a break from reading or watching the news and have a digital detox to clear my mind. And I'm going to comment on it. And then I want you to comment it and read one of yours. But the reason I wrote this was that sometimes being on the phone or just around media can be too overstimulating and too much pressure, especially if there's something negative going on. And there's a lot of negative stuff going on right now. There's a lot of pain in the world. Um, and it's too much. We need to set aside time to grieve so that we can get to a place where we can have conversations about war. We can have conversations about other things, but just for a day to say, you know what, I'm not going to turn on CNN today or BBC. I'm not going to listen to NPR on the way to work. I'm just going to drive to work. I'm just going to sit with my thoughts. And like you said, there are some days where people can't be still and be silent, and that's okay too. If a card doesn't resonate with you, shuffle it and find another one that you can do that day. And I
yeah.
promise you that next month or next week, you can come back to that and maybe try that on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one because, the news is just a constant barrage of negativity, right? It's by that way by design. It's, meant to make you fearful and it's just meant to draw you in and consume you. That's how they get their listeners and their audience and their watchers, right? So, and then when it comes to social media, I actually did a post about this a few weeks ago. It's one of my recent posts where um, I know social media is a slippery slope. And, especially when we lose a pet, a lot of people will go to social media and join these groups that I just mentioned a little bit ago. And, it can be very comforting on the one hand because it reminds us we're not alone. And, we can just sort of share and commiserate in that a little bit. But then the other side of it is if you get too consumed by it, then and you're absorbing other people's grief or comparing grief or being
Mm,
devastated by other people's tragic stories, it's kind of taking up a lot of space and we don't always have room for it. And I see that sometimes in my support groups too, where I always say, one of my sort of housekeeping rules, if, I'm glad you're here and I hope you find some peace by being here, but there's no obligation to stay. If you're here today and something triggers you or it doesn't feel quite right, there's no harm, there's no problem in hitting the leave button and coming back and trying another time because we
yeah,
just don't always have the capacity to
yeah.
take in other people's
You're right.
stories.
You're right.
So,
And I need to be more vigilant about that and explaining it because my when I ask people to come in and stay only so that they're not being takers and they're coming and like sharing and then leaving and providing, a sense of community. But you're absolutely right. If anybody is triggered or just is going to have needs a moment, like go, yeah, you have to take care of yourself. So I think I
mm,
need to be a little bit more clear about that in my own group. But what what card you've got 10.
yeah,
Let's
I've got
shuffle
10.
and
So
grab
let's
one.
see.
Let's
Yeah, I'm
just
going
do
to
one.
shuffle.
And she's
Um,
got the miniature deck for those of you that are watching on YouTube. The miniature deck is designed to be carried in your pocket, and you can go to the bathroom and read one of the cards and just kind of redirect your thoughts. So,
mm,
those things are overwhelming. And just to double back on that comment about the media. So when we're grieving, we're kind of paddling upstream just to stay afloat. And one of the ways out of that, one of the ways to make it easier is to redirect our thoughts into positive and loving memories of our pet and what we loved about them, what they loved about us, just our bond and focusing on things that make our heart glow, like ET, instead of the constant barrage of they're not here, my life is over, I don't want to go on. Like if that's going to be there, but we want to try to balance it. We want to just try to put a little bit of water on the other side of the bucket. I don't even know why I said that, but like tip the scale is what I was trying to say. And it came out with
yeah.
water in a bucket. Okay, I don't know. But um that so to keep your cup, to keep space in there, to not go too dark, too deep. We've got to work to stay in the light. Okay.
Mm. Yeah, no, good point because yeah, I always make it a point to never try to convince a community member, support group member, client that they should or shouldn't feel a certain way. But if it is really, more on the dark, deep, intense negative side, can we try to just give some equal airtime, as I call it? And
Oh
I
yeah, I like
don't,
that.
yeah, I learned that in other coaching things, so I don't take ownership of that. But I love the saying of equal airtime because let's try to just create a little bit of space for something else that might be true. If you want to believe or hold on to something that you think is true and that works for you right now, and but it really is not helpful in the grand scheme of things, what else can offset what's the other side of that that might also be true? And it just kind of takes down the temperature, the intensity, and just opens up our minds to what else is maybe possible. So, with that said, the card that I ended up picking is I am willing to let go of feeling guilty. What a perfect segue, right? I release all need for guilt or blame. I know I did the best that I could with what I had. And this is absolutely one of my favorites because grief and guilt go hand in hand when it comes to our pets, especially because, they're like babies to us, children to us from start to finish. We're responsible for them. And no matter how we lose them, I just have yet to see someone that doesn't take guilt along for the ride as they at least in the very beginning of their grief journey. And what I have seen over time, because I've got people that, like I said, a couple that are in the anticipatory stage. I've got people that are, they're fresh and raw and very recent with their loss. And then I've got others 4, 5, 6 years who are coming. And in some cases, it's because they never gave themselves the opportunity to properly grieve in the beginning, and they're so grateful to now have that now, and it's never too late.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for some people there's too much intensity around it and they need to distract themselves, but it doesn't go away, you guys. If you don't deal
Yeah.
with your grief, it's going to just follow you around like a shadow. But about the guilt, so that got me right in the heart as you read it because I did feel guilty and I luckily had the insight to realize that it wasn't helping me, it was actually
Mhm.
hurting me. So to
Yeah.
become willing to let go of the guilt was like a baby step into saying, "Hey, I'm starting to recognize what's going to help me on my path to heal and what isn't." And feeling guilty is a choice. Sure. Do I wish things had gone differently? Of course, 100%. For those of you that know my story, yeah, it's all about guilt and blame. But it doesn't help anyone. Is it going to
Yeah.
make me feel better? No, it makes me feel worse.
Mhm.
So, okay, what can we do instead? Well, I can accept what happened. Okay. I can choose other thoughts. Okay. So it really is about adopting new ways of looking at what happened. And you and Bachi were together a long time. Wolfgang and I were not together very long. We were
Yeah.
together during the pandemic. Um, and so I don't think it really matters to people what the species is, the time frame, the circumstances. A bond is a bond. A soul pet is a soul pet. End of story. and and to look for ways that will help us out of the negative cycle of thinking. And that's really the core of what I try to bring to the table is acknowledging what's going on and then okay, are we ready to do something about it today or not? And again, shuffle the card. But there's also I didn't plan on talking about this, but this Healing Hearts journal that Crystal contributed to. Um, so it has these morning and evening prompts, and the morning prompts are what's going well in my life right now with some lines of text, lines to write. What are three things I am grateful for? Because we know now scientifically that expressing gratitude and focusing on gratitude
Mm.
develops more and redirects our thoughts. What are some ways I can be better supported today? So that is something that applies to anyone anywhere, honestly. Like all of these don't apply just to grief. But and then the evening is what are three things that went well today? Despite, me just like maybe that's a day someone doesn't shower or um ate Cheetos the whole day. Okay, but there are some things that went well, like you got out of bed, you ate, so it's a really matter of like flipping the coin. How are you going to look at what's going on? And then
Yeah.
tomorrow is what can I do to make tomorrow go a little bit better?
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
it
it's
setting up the coffee maker? I mean, that's going to start my day off great. I do that every night.
mm,
And then I put in the bottom this emotional check-in because if we're having several weeks, I know from my experience being bipolar, if I have several weeks where I'm at a high or a low, it's time to call my doctor. So I put that in there for myself and I thought, okay, maybe this is helpful for other people too with their grief and that if they're having a series of really, really lows of the ones, then it's time to talk to your MD or a psychiatrist, to get some extra help. And it's
mhm,
okay. But sometimes we're not even aware that we're that bad for that long. And we don't want it to escalate. So I had to put that in there that was something that I use and you can ignore it. And like you don't have to do this journal perfectly. There's days that I only enter like just the morning and then I never do the night or and it's okay. Like there's no wrong way to do it. But the fact is that I'm doing it, I'm creating self-awareness. And I had, oh my gosh, therapists, psychologists, bereavement coaches, counselors, pet professionals contribute to this from all over the world. Um, I don't have time to read everybody, but it was a really fun project. And I'm so
mm.
grateful for all the people that supported it and gave comments and words of encouragement.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're bringing that up because it just goes back to that concept of equal airtime, right? And to have something physical and tangible like a guided journal such as that, where it really is just some simple prompts and questions, I think can be so helpful because it does sort of force, for lack of a better word, but it makes you think about the other things because there is always something still good in our life and something to be grateful for. Even it is if it is the simplest of things, my coffee tasted good today.
Right.
I hit all the green lights. I mean, we could still come up with something, right?
Yes, I love that.
So
Yeah,
something physical and tangible is great, especially for people who are not necessarily into journaling and can just open up a blank page and start writing. To have something that's more guided and gives you the prompts is awesome. Yeah.
I couldn't find yours in time, but I'm gonna add it to the show notes at the end so everybody knows that you contributed to that, and thank you for that. Um, Crystal, is there anything else you would like people to know about grief or where to find you? Of course, you guys, if you when you go to the show notes on Apple or Spotify or iHeartRadio, you will see the links included.
Yeah, so my website is getcrystalclear.com. So easy, getcrystalclear.com. I'm on Instagram, Get Crystal Clear. I'm on Facebook. I also have my own private Facebook group for pet loss support. And I always make sure I use the word private to describe it because I know sometimes people worry about, oh, is someone else going to see,
Hmm,
what I post? And I do have it set to private so people can, feel safe about what they post in there. And there's a lot of wonderful sharing. And I love that it sort of bridges the gap in between live support groups for people to always have.
right.
And I'm sure you feel the same. No, it's always available to you 24/7. And it's just another great place to give and get support. Yeah, so I've got my support group schedule is always on my website and updated pretty regularly. And I've been sort of sprinkling in some special things, like I said, just to kind of change things up, like the yoga class last weekend. And yeah, I'm always looking for new ways to help people and support them on their grief journey.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here today, but also in what you do in the world. I know it has touched a lot of people, and thank you for also bringing up about the privacy of the Facebook group. Mine's also private, and I never really remember to tell people that. Like anyone
Mm,
can join,
right.
but you do have to answer some questions, and it's
Yeah.
like the same rules apply of, please be kind and considerate. Don't put anybody down, or you'll be removed and blocked. Um, but yeah, it is a safe space, and that's what we want people to feel is they can come in and say, "Hey, I'm totally shredded and destroyed, and I have to go to work today, or I have to go
Mhm.
work on this case, and I have to go and do these things." Life doesn't stop getting lifey,
Right.
but if we have a little bit of, you know, compassion and understanding from people, and I love that it's strangers helping each other because that
Right.
really helped me. The Rainbow Bridge Pet Loss group on Facebook is what I joined. I think it's got like
Yeah.
133,000 people in there or something. And one night I was like, okay, I'm at the point where I need help and I don't know what to do. And I've lost my mind. And here's the story. I like within seconds, 400 people responded, like, we've got you. We get it. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. Um, totally understand. And I remember just crying, going, "What? People care? Like strangers care and I'm not crazy?" It was like one of the best. I remember I was laying on my bed going, "Oh my goodness." And the thing
Yeah.
that's also nice about Facebook groups, and that's just the last thing I want to say is that, we can close the app anytime if it's too much.
Yep.
You have the control to dive in or get out.
Right.
And that's really important because there are times where we do need distraction. We do need to stop thinking about it for a little bit, go watch a movie or have a dinner with a friend. Um, and it's a balance of figuring out and navigating that new normal, like you said,
Yeah, I
that
think
I
we have to check in with our own grief and see where we're at before we decide we're gonna open up ourselves to take in all of this other stuff that,
Mhm,
sucks our energy and consumes our thoughts. And, neither needs to be permanent, whether you decide to take a break and just step away from it a little bit, it's temporary. And when
right,
you're sort of in it because you're up for it more and
right.
you're feeling like you can be there for other people, then great. So but it's good to check in with yourself first. And yeah, I know we've like barely scratched the surface
Scratch the
today.
surface. I
There's
know. I
so many other directions we could go in, and I guess the last thing I would want to say is just try it, just come to a group, reach out. I have yet to have someone not be pleasantly surprised and thankful and grateful that they found their way to a support group. So, yeah.
Yeah, you guys, there's no wrong way to grieve except by not grieving.
Yep.
That's
Well
my new
said.
t-shirt. I have so many t-shirt ideas. There are
Bumper
some t-shirts
sticker.
in the shop. There are some t-shirts in the shop that say stay positive and it's never just a pet. But
Never just a pet. Right.
with Printify, I think I need to go in. I never have time to do this, but go in and make some new ones. Like
Yeah.
um what is it I just said? Oh yeah. There's no wrong way to grieve, only just by not grieving. And I'll say it better. I don't know. We'll see what
Yep.
that ends up being in the shop. But thank you so much
Yeah.
for your
Well said.
time
Thank
and
you.
for visiting on this holiday and for all that you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm so glad we connected and glad I reached out to you last year, again, just on a whim, take a chance, and here we are collaborating and staying connected and supporting each other. So just another beautiful thing that is a result of our own grief journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And you guys check out the show notes or again, go to wolfieswish.com or getcrystalclear.com and you can get into those groups and start getting connected.
Thanks, Erica.